All right, guys, today we're going to look at estimating the cost of a concrete pad. This pad is 12 by 16 by 4 inches thick, and you probably saw that in the procedure. I know I had you guys look at that the other day, so you had an idea where we were going to go. We're going to talk about a couple things before I get you started. So some common uses for concrete, reinforcement bar, how much the concrete costs, and then the other components that go in that as well. The second half of this presentation, we'll have an example of what you guys have to do with exception of the correct prices. So I'm going to give you current prices that you guys will do yours with, so it will not come out to be the same as what you guys see in this presentation, although the steps are still the same and you can refer to those for a little bit extra help. That'll be there. So now some uses for concrete. We see it everywhere. It really is a powerhouse of the civil engineering and architecture field, and certainly what we use to build large and strong structures that really stand the test of time. So they're certainly using foundations and footings that hold up our structures, as well as in those structures themselves, driveways and sidewalks, floors, retaining walls, so things that hold back ground or earth, piers and columns, and many other things too on a smaller scale. So reinforcement bar, that is what we're going to add to our concrete. And the reason we do that is because concrete, as we mentioned, has an awesome compression strength. So you can push on it all day and it's going to hold up, but it does not have great tensile strength. So tensile strength is when we pull apart on something, but it does not have that characteristic. So when we add our steel to it, now it takes on the characteristics of both the concrete and the steel. So now it has awesome compression strength as well as awesome tensile strength. So that's why we combine those two materials. So if we look at this picture down here, we have some steel in there. We don't see the concrete yet. And we have these wooden frames around that. Anybody know what those are? Hopefully somebody's thinking along the lines of a form. We need something that's going to hold the shape of our concrete when we pour it. As you see, there is some gaps underneath that would be filled or backfilled with dirt or another layer of material brought down there, so it can't just pour out of there. But we'll talk more about those materials here in a few minutes. All right, so here's another picture of reinforcement bar. The picture on the left is a footer. It's got concrete, or rather steel rod reinforcement bar coming out of that. So when they pour the next layer of concrete on top of it, they'll be able to connect those pieces of material or those two separate pieces of concrete. That right picture, we see some reinforcement bar inside that form, so the concretes can get poured inside that OSB and really wrap around and set up around that reinforcement bar. All right, so now we're going to start talking about estimating the concrete pad. There's really three different things that you have to calculate for and then really add those together. The first thing is going to be the volume of concrete. So we need to do a length times width times thickness. You'll see that on the next slide. And that'll give you a volume. In this case, it's going to be cubic feet to start, and you'll have to convert that to cubic yards. There's 27. There's 27 cubic feet in 1 cubic yard. You could also use a converter online. Either one would be acceptable, but you should know that number. So you need the concrete. After that, you need to price out the amount of steel reinforcement bar that would go in that. So we're going to use 10-foot lengths of reinforcement bar, and they overlap 6 inches. Okay, so how many of those are you going to need to fill a 12 by 16 concrete pad? We'll talk about the price per piece here in a minute. And you should stay 3 inches from the edge, and that makes sure we don't have reinforcement bar sticking out the end later, and that it still comes fairly close to the edge to maintain that strength of the concrete and steel. So we've talked about the concrete, we've talked about the reinforcement bar that goes in there. There are two numbers you're going to have to come up with. And the last thing is the form we mentioned a minute ago. So on the outside of this, to hold that concrete in place while it sets up, we need to make a 4-inch border around the outside of it. So you guys can use 2 by 6 by 12s. We'll talk about the price. You can also use a 2 by 6 by 8 for the remaining 4-foot pieces. As you get going here, I imagine you'll figure out what those 4-foot pieces are for. So I think that'll get you guys pretty well into the activity. If you go further in this, it's going to really solve that with some different dollar amounts that don't represent accurate prices. So we're going to give you guys some accurate prices to complete this with, but you can still follow those steps in the following slides to help you guys complete it, and a little bit extra information to help. One other thing that I did not mention that you're going to want to pay close attention to. We had to find volume for our concrete. If we have a pad that's 16 feet by 18 feet by 4 inches thick, what's the problem we're going to have when we do our volume calculation? Hopefully you're saying one of those units is not the same. So you have to convert inches to feet. All right, so what's 4 inches in feet? We know that 4 goes into 12 3 times, so it's 0.3 feet. That's going to be the number that you use to calculate your volume. So it should be 16 times 18 times 0.3. That'll give you your cubic feet of concrete, which will then be converted to cubic yards. Please pay close attention to that. Sorry, guys. So pay close attention to that, and I think you guys will be all right. The next thing you're going to look at here is going to be the prices that I want you guys to use to calculate this, and I'm just going to show you a little image that's got the price of a concrete per yard. So you might have to use that number if you have multiple yards of concrete. I'll also give you the price for 10-foot lengths of the steel reinforcement bar, as well as the prices for 2 by 6 by 12 and 2 by 6 by 8 material to build your form out of. Once it's all said and done, add these numbers up and you should be all set and have a pretty close and rough idea of the total cost of a 12 by 16 concrete pad. All right, take a look at the next slide for prices, and good luck. All right, guys, so we have a couple things here that I want you to look at. You guys can use these prices as you do your concrete pad estimate. 10-foot rebar, $9. 1 yard of concrete, $115. A 2 by 6 by 12 foot used for the form is $10 each. A 2 by 6 by 8 for the form is $8 each. You could use any number of these, so I'll let you guys try to figure out what the combination might be, total your dollar up, and see how close you get to the correct answer. We'll talk about it next week, and we'll see how you guys do. So good luck.